Jules, one of my very first uni assignments that I was given
Yep.
was for the uni newspaper.
Yep.
You had to submit an article that would be considered to be published in the paper. And so people would like go out and interview family members or like the local act at the local pub or whatever.
Yeah.
And I chose to go to Pauline Hanson's very first rally in Perth.
Wow.
She was polling very well in WA at the time.
Yeah.
And there was,
What year was this?
This was 1997. There was a big movement around, one nation being set up and this new way of thinking about our national identity. So I picked the hardest topic in the room. And my lecturer said to me, you don't really have to go this hard. And I opted to go and cover the protest as a student journalist, and not to go into the media pen, but to buy a ticket like everyone else and sit in the crowd. I was the only person of colour, possibly the only person with coloured hair, sitting in this massive stadium, Challenge Stadium, in 1997. And
How was it?
It was oddly friendly. People were lovely. They had concerns about immigration, housing, cost of living, healthcare, education, the curriculum in the education system, all perfectly reasonable concerns about a growing society and a changing society, but all being pinned on immigration. And they were curious about the solutions that were being offered by One Nation and by Pauline Hanson. But I got to talk to some of these people about what they cared about, and they kind of looked at me and kind of referred to me as the little Indian boy. And I sort of left the venue and called them up on the phone and did these interviews with them, and kind of was really struck at how these people were being characterised as these profoundly racist people, but were actually sort of in person quite lovely and didn't really have a problem with me. And it's something I've been thinking about this week with the protests taking place around the country, the anti-immigration protests, about, is this about me? And what are these people about? And are their concerns legitimate?
Or is it about people you don't know? Like, oh, you're okay.
Yeah.
You're a lovely little Indian boy.
Yeah,
It's
100%.
everyone else who we don't actually know. It's a really interesting one to unpick. I'm Julia Baird.
And I'm Jeremy Fernandez, coming to you from Sydney on Gadigal land. And this is Not Stupid, where we talk about the news of the week and the stuff that's tickling your feeds.
And one thing I'm keen to talk to you about today, Jez, is photos by AI of Gavin Newsom, Californian governor, shirt off, riding a shark, a bear, holding aloft a flag. He is trying to out-Trump Trump with sarcasm, with insults, with kind of puffed up statements about the world's greatest governor. And a lot of people, Jez, are saying it's working.
I don't know how I feel about it, but it's very entertaining. First, though, Jules, I want to talk about these anti-immigration protests over the weekend. It's something that touches me professionally. I was working on the day of the protests, reading the news, and also personally, obviously, look at me. But it was a really interesting thing to cover because every few years we seem to get these kind of big questions about immigration and dovetailing with that, what our national identity is as an immigrant nation, right? What did you think when you saw those protests?
I have to say I was incredibly confronted by signs of violence, by attacks on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people at Camp Sovereignty. I was really taken aback by the presence of neo-Nazis and having the microphone, and by what appeared to be strong elements of race there, Jez. It's just not something we see on our streets. What did you think?
It was an interesting thing because one of the terms that came across my desk when I was working that day was this term, mass migration.
Yeah.
Now, I think that term invokes a particular kind of imagery, that mass migration is whole states,
Hordes.
towns, cities of people just being picked up, put on a plane and just dropped in Australia, which is not what is happening. It misrepresents the actual migration figures and how the selection process takes place to bring people into this country, right? So it was something that I think the media has been a bit slow to kind of fact check what mass migration actually means. And when you look at the numbers of countries that take in migrants, Australia's not really up there. When you're talking about planned migration, when you're talking about refugees and asylum seekers, Australia falls fairly low on that list. We've got a very controlled migration program that skews skilled labour. So 70% of the permanent migration program is for people who are skilled. So we're talking about people who are educated, high income earners, relatively speaking, who are adding to the economy, the growth of the economy, and also paying taxes. The other 30% is allocated towards families. So the government's just announced that they're keeping the cap on migration at 185,000 a year. Now, there are larger figures than that, sort of closer to 500,000, that are for temporary migrants. So people like on working holiday visas, student visas, these are people who come and go. And those figures from the ABS are partly sort of skewed because people can leave the country and come back several times over, and each time they re-enter Australia, they're counted again. So there's been some misapplication of the official figures from the ABS saying that 500,000 people are coming to Australia every year. That's not actually what's happening, but it seems to have been lost a bit in the debate about immigration and mass immigration.
Why are we using the word mass?
Well, this is the term that was used by the people who were protesting because they feel that immigration is not only a challenge to our national identity, whatever they determine that to be, but also putting pressure on things like hospitals, healthcare, childcare, education system,
Can I just say
housing.
just quickly on the point of hospitals, if we didn't have a strong migration program, our hospitals would collapse. Has anyone actually spent a significant period of time in hospital lately?
A hospital, yeah, exactly.
We are completely reliant, incredibly reliant on people who have migrated here.
So it seems fascinating to me that the figures have been used to justify a point and have been misapplied. The figures are actually being wrongly interpreted to explain these points of view. And so when these people took to the streets on the weekend, they said it's not about race, it's about sustainable immigration. And relying on figures that they were interpreting correctly. And I found that really troubling because a lot of the issues that they were raising, things like those issues, housing, education, healthcare, are actually legitimate issues.
So there's a couple of points here. So the first is there's people who are responding to some kind of alarmism around maybe the use of the numbers, the use of the term mass like you've described. So they're growing anxious about that. The second is people who are genuinely worried that there isn't enough infrastructure in place to manage migration, that we just are not putting enough thought into it. And then thirdly, there are the far-right groups that are exploiting this kind of anxiety in the community to mainstream their other positions, including on race.
And it was interesting to see because there were lots of different elements of the crowd, right? You got people who were concerned, genuinely concerned about housing, all the way to the neo-Nazis. And it was interesting to see, I think, the political reaction to that, especially when you consider a few weeks ago, there was concern about people turning out to protest in support of Gaza and how politicians, you know, the premiers, the Prime Minister reacted to the right of these people to protest against immigration.
Well, I actually think some people made that direct connection because Barnaby Joyce said fascism is an inherent evil. If you said every person there is bad, that's ridiculous. But he speculated that the weekend's protests were in basically direct response to the protests about Gaza. He said the colour of your skin doesn't determine your character, as other people vastly more clever than me have said in the past. What I say is that people have a right to ventilate those issues. When you have a whole heap of people walking across the bridge waving ISIS flags and Taliban flags, you're going to get pushback.
Okay, so this is really interesting, right?
Yeah.
How do you characterise a protest crowd? Because that is true. People were walking across the bridge with pictures of Ayatollah Khamenei, the leader of Iran, defending Hamas's actions in Gaza, Hezbollah,
Death to the IDF.
Death to the IDF,
But
exactly.
if you speak to people who were there,
Actually there at the crowd.
that was not the vibe of it at all, and they were on the fringes.
So then do we apply that same principle to this weekend rally, this anti-immigration rally,
Okay.
when we take the worst people who were there, the neo-Nazis,
right. But they
to
got a
characterise the
microphone.
entire crowd?
They got a microphone. So the moment at which they're permitted to speak, I think we have a problem. And then there was the violence afterwards. So I think that's where that comes a bit undone. But it's a good point. Because we know that protest organisers try to monitor that themselves. And I was listening to a report about WA protests, and people within those were yelling Nazi scum. In the immigration marches, we're saying, get out, we don't want you here, because it distracts and it dilutes and all the rest of it. So it's a bit of a hot mess.
What do you think about the idea that these issues, these legitimate social issues, are pinned on immigration as the cause? Because to me, to say reduce immigration is to say stop people giving birth, like reduce the birth rate, which I think, and both those arguments are absurd because we need both to support an aging population,
Exactly.
and to grow the economy.
Yep.
And to basically reduce taxes as well, right? Because
And
the
it's
tax
been
burden needs to be shared by more people.
It's been our secret sauce.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think what's interesting is that there was talk of housing and housing affordability around these marches. And I think that's a massive problem that needs to be solved. The fact that it's then blamed on migrants is clumsy and incorrect. Like, there's just so many more substantial issues when it comes to the structural problems around housing.
Do you believe those people can be persuaded that, who are concerned about those issues like housing, can be persuaded that immigration is not the problem, that politics and planning and state and federal government cooperation is actually what needs to be fixed? Or is there an inevitable underlying racism here? Because I certainly know, and I know a lot of people of colour particularly, who were walking through central Sydney the other day and in Melbourne as well, who were looking over their shoulders. I certainly was. Nothing happened to me. No one even, gave me a glance really. But I was surrounded by people in red, white and blue, carrying the flag, draped in the flag. And these were massive flags the size of this couch.
Sense of menace? What was it?
I was concerned, and I was looking over my shoulder, like, am I going to get recognised because I do work on TV? Is someone going to take issue with me being here? And there's this very much this sense of this is my country, not your country kind of thing. And I thought, I'm just really not up for a fight right now. I'm just trying to get to the office and catch my train. But nothing happened, So then I kind of found myself questioning, am I kind of unfairly judging these people for making me feel this sense of menace when actually they're just protesting like everyone has a right to do? I found myself second-guessing myself.
I think that there is a sense around some of the edges of these protests about kind of we see the skirmishes, we see the outbreaks, and we see the violence. We see that there's a lot of hateful sentiments. There is a reason that we as a country have decided that Nazi symbols should not be displayed, should not be sold, should not be used to incite hate in this country. So to have a visceral response to people who are carrying the Australian flag as a coded way of excluding people is entirely an understandable thing, I think.
The Greens Senator Mehreen Faruqi has put forward a motion for debate on social cohesion, and she said the rally over the weekend should be a wake-up call, and she's accused other politicians of having downplayed or fueled racism. And she says that racism is how this country was founded, in how our First Nations people were treated and how their land and their culture was taken from them. And it's an issue that's never really been resolved, which is, I think, a fair comment that most Australians will kind of accept.
Right.
We have this unresolved issue about race and identity, but here we are all on this island trying to kind of work out who we are, get along, and also figure out what brings us together. And that's what sort of worries me about debates like this. It's like, it's pointing out all the things that we disagree on without much of an effort to work out what it is that brings us together, especially from that particular crowd.
And there's so much that brings us together.
There is.
Yeah. It's kind of, I think it's quite jarring to see that there are concerns that people are really worried about to be pulled together by white supremacists. So you don't want to say anyone that's worried about migration wants to talk about infrastructure, housing, health, whether we actually have these things in place, whether we've got sufficient urban planning, whether we've got regional planning, like whether we have a good and smart enough discussion about all of that. We don't want every person who raises that to be like, oh, well, therefore you're a racist, right? But I think one hot tip would be, if you want to have that discussion, don't hang out with white supremacists.
Yeah. Who've never travelled and never met, likely had a great deal of contact with people from diverse backgrounds.
Right.
One thing that was really interesting to me in the debate is this idea of assimilation. It was a term that was used a lot by Pauline Hanson. I remember it from 1997, that migrants fail to assimilate. And I think, the job of social cohesion doesn't just come down to politicians. It doesn't come down to the existing population solely. It's also on migrants to find ways to facilitate social cohesion. It's up to all of us to facilitate it. And I think there's sometimes this thought that it's sort of someone else's job to facilitate bringing us together without some sense of responsibility. That if you're going to be walking around with an Australian flag, mate, you've got to do the job of facilitating social cohesion as well.
Yeah, we don't want the flag to be a symbol of exclusion. But Jez, do you feel that there was anything different about this? Is this a different time in our history?
I don't, to be honest.
Yep.
And I know a number of people of colour who've written about this, who've spoken about it publicly. This was not surprising. It's something that I feel like I've lived with all my life. And I don't think it's a uniquely Australian problem, by the way. I've lived in Malaysia and the UK.
Yeah.
You see this playing out in different forms. It manifests in different ways. But ultimately, immigration is a difficult thing. I mean, you're pulling people from different backgrounds together and, kind of jamming them in a place, jamming them on an island and saying, hey, all get along. That is not something that happens automatically. 100%. But these sentiments that were expressed, completely unsurprising to me. I have anticipated this. This is always in the back of my head. And so when I saw this take place, it was like, it's remarkable, but not surprising.
Important we talk about.
Absolutely important we talk about, and important the protests are held as well. I really do believe that if we're going to allow and defend the right to protest and the right to express views, that should be afforded to everyone. But you also have a right, I think, to be called out, particularly when the information on which you're protesting is the information on which that protest is based is false and actively disinforming the community.
And without the Nazi symbols.
That would be very handy because we've kind of agreed collectively.
So did you note that there was footage of some of the far-right demonstrators afterwards went out for lunch?
I did it.
To Yum Cha.
All the things.
Oh, it just...
I actually thought it was a parody. I thought it was like, this is the Shovel or the Batuta Advocate or something. No, it was actually real.
It's like Australian satire. You can imagine a skit of that, can't you?
But who can blame them though? Yum Cha is good. This is the point. Immigration is good.
Cha. Yeah.
It enriches our country. Migrants bring things that you want to do and eat and kind of share.
Yeah, but it also speaks to what you're used to as opposed to a looming abstract threat. Oh, not my Yum Cha restaurant.
Just
not my
Yum Cha.
Indian friend.
It's so weird, isn't it?
It's so weird. Every now and then you and I will decide to talk about something because we've slipped each other a quiet little meme
DM.
on the gram or elsewhere. And this one came from you, Jez, and it was a shirtless Gavin Newsom.
It makes me sound so creepy. But it was a very, very
buff
and handsome Gavin Newsom, governor of California. He's a Democrat. He's been famously feuding with Donald Trump lately.
They do not like each other.
But what I'd completely missed is that there's this whole fan fiction imagery of Gavin Newsom, the great muscular saviour of the Democrats.
Riding a shark. Riding a bear, holding little kittens
riding
with
a
American
T-Rex,
flags. T-Rex.
Being prayed over by Hulk
Never with
Hogan,
a shirt. Don't need a shirt.
Tucker Carlson, Kid Rock. like wild. And I'd completely missed it. I was actually in the makeup chair and brought up this image.
Yeah.
And the makeup artist goes to me, "Oh, he's hot. Who's he?" And I thought, this might just work, actually.
Well, actually, it is. And I do really want to talk about this because it's not just these kind of AI imagery, which is like, you know, again, cartoonish, but very much what Trump has been doing as well. Like, this is me as the hero of the world. It's what people are calling dark woke. So it's about Democrats or the left fighting back like trolls, like cranky but also satirical and funny and nasty. And like Trump doesn't seem to quite know how to take it. But I want to explain first of all the relationship between the two of them, which has been, as you say, not particularly friendly. They've been open rivals. Donald Trump has called Newsom Newscum for some time now. Newsom talks about how he's, the fourth biggest economy in the world. They're back and forth. There was tension over the bushfires, and Trump would criticise Newsom, and Newsom wanted more resources. And there was this concern that, wait, are national resources to help fight fires only directed to states that the president likes now or who voted for the president now? So there was all of that debate. And then there's also been a question of gerrymandering. So gerrymandering is the process by which the lawmakers in each state in the US, they do this about every 10 years, carve up the state for seats.
And they redraw the electoral boundaries.
They redraw a map every 10 years. But Trump would like people to start doing it now, every kind of 5 years into it. So Texas went, sure, not a problem, carved it up, and guess what? Lo and behold, 5 more Republican seats. Mm-hmm. And so Newsom was like, well, this is ridiculous, and brought in something like a election rigging response act in which he redrew his maps to give 5 more Democrat seats.
And the idea here is that you basically draw really weird squiggly lines around the map to quarantine all your opposition into one seat and leave the rest for your own team.
Watch where the growth is. Yeah, exactly. It's complete manipulation. And even Obama, who's like, look, we don't want to gerrymander overtly as a country, but given that there are Republican governors now acting on instructions from the White House to try to create more Republican seats in the lead up to the midterms, then actually it's a sensible response, what Gavin Newsom is doing. So this is what we've got. This is the tension between these two men.
And it's worth mentioning too that Gavin Newsom was at the last election before Kamala Harris's nomination was considered a possible runner against Donald Trump, right? So the rivalry goes way back, and he's being touted as a possible contender for the next presidential election as well.
And
but what happened to the high road? Like, the Obamas, like, they go low, we go high, all that sort of stuff. Now, are the Democrats kind of like switching and kind of going, well, they go low, we'll meet them right there. Is that what's happening?
Well, I think there was a strong sense that is not working. It's not working. You could see even in the Democratic National Convention, remember we covered that, and there was a bit of, suddenly Obama was saying, why is Donald Trump so concerned about crowd size, with his hands indicating that it was more a genital concern. There are a few more barbs than we would normally have seen from them. But, I mean, relatively speaking, quite tepid. Even earlier this year, Gavin Newsom was like, no, I want to meet with people on the right and far right. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to be civil.
Be a unifier.
But
all
now
that
he's saying, wake up. We have got so much at stake here. Things are so out of control with what he sees as Trump moving towards a very authoritarian government, employing the military and so on. That was another time that they conflicted when Trump brought the military into California following some protests. He's just saying now is the time. But let me take you, Jez, through some of his responses. Now, he does it all in caps. Anyone who's seen anything Trump has done on Truth Social will find some of this quite familiar. Fox hates that I am America's favourite governor, brackets, ratings king, saving America, while Trump can't even conquer the big stairs on Air Force One anymore. Fox is losing it because when I type, America now wins. And as Trump always says at the end of his tweets, or quite often, thank you for your attention to this matter. Okay. Now, there's some quite bitchy stuff as well. Like,
I don't know how I feel about this because I am laughing, but
Yes.
I'm also mindful that this is taking politics to a whole new
Is this what it
depth.
takes now?
Is this what it takes? And
Yeah.
is this where we are
Is
now?
this presidential or aspirational presidential? Okay, listen to some of these then. So he put up a post of J.D. Vance criticising Trump in the past. You know, he said he was a never Trumper. And he'll say, with the retweet, he says, grew a beard and lost his spine, but at least he kept the eyeliner, right? Then he posts, when Trump says you have an incompetent governor in California, Gavin, I know him very well. He's a nice guy, good looking. He has some hand action going on. There's something going on there that's pretty weird. And Newsom says, you really want to have the conversation about hands? Because we know that Trump is very sensitive about having short fingers ever since Graydon Carter described him as a short-fingered vulgarian decades ago in Vanity Fair. You know, Trump will be talking about hosting the 2026 Soccer Cup and he goes, I may try and play. I may put on shorts. I look extremely good in shorts. And Newsom goes, please don't. It's that kind of thing. He goads him, dementia, low approval, but even also reminding us like things that are acceptable now or seemingly acceptable never would be. So he has a photo of Trump with the words, a lot of people are saying maybe we'd like a dictator, which Trump said recently, and I love black people. And Newsom will just post it with going, super normal stuff, everyone.
Yeah.
Super normal stuff.
So, Jules, how are Republicans reacting to this? Because this is super normal stuff for their side of politics.
Yeah.
But it's quite unusual to see the left side of politics, Democrats who are concerned with, you know, social equality and greater government role in the economy and in politics.
Yeah.
Being so hyper-masculine. It's actually kind of a bit jarring in your head, the imagery. How are Republicans reacting?
The hyper-masculine thing is really interesting.
It's wild.
What do you think that's about? It's responding to Donald Trump and the, you know, World Wrestling support and Kid Rock and Hulk Hogan, all those things. Don't you think that kind of masculinity he's been touting?
I do, but that hyper-masculinity also turned off a whole bunch of people at the last election, right? So
Did it?
Well, half the country at least. I mean, partly. I don't know, like, you know.
Yeah.
But it was ridiculed at the last election when, you know, you had Hulk Hogan on stage ripping off his shirt and this whole, you know, kissing muscles and all that kind of thing. It's just not a language.
But it also worked.
Yeah, but it also worked. And it's not a language that Democrats were accustomed to speaking.
Well, we say that, but the minute he starts to speak aggressively, suddenly we see all these AI
all the fan
images of him.
fiction.
All the fan fiction. I think the Republican responses are interesting because they don't seem to quite know what to do. If you say, don't talk like this, then Newsom will be like, well, Trump's been talking like that for ages, so you're fine with it? Or they'll say, oh, you're just copying him. And it's like, okay. He's really a lightning rod right now.
Yeah.
Like Fox is going at him
Really
all the
hard,
time.
yeah.
So Fox News' Dana Perino said, if I were his wife, I would say you're making a fool of yourself. He's got a big job as governor of California, but if he wants an even bigger job, he has to be a little more serious. White House Deputy Press Secretary said that his posts are weird and not funny. Steve Bannon was interesting, actually. I mean, he's obviously been very influential with MAGA, and he said he's trying to mimic Trump. He's no Trump, but if you look at the Democratic Party, he's at least getting up there, trying to imitate a Trumpian vision of fighting. He looks like the only person in the Democratic Party who's organising a fight they feel they can win.
He's right. Steve Bannon's right.
Yeah, and look at the way, again, millions and millions of people hopping on and reposting. I mean, I can see how it's galvanising people because he's calling out and mimicking a way of speaking and behaving that some might see as very self-referential. For example, his recent, we know what happened with Qatar and the planes, right, that Trump was gifted. Gavin Newsom's press office put this out recently. I, Gavin C. Newsom, the most successful governor in American history, hereby demand that Canada gift me a big, beautiful plane.
Not just any plane, a big, beautiful plane. He mimics the language.
Yeah. I get to keep after I leave office if I leave, in brackets. If their new Prime Minister, very nice guy but not as handsome as Trudeau, does not send me a plane, California will impose the biggest tariffs he's ever seen. And it is my God-given right. Many people are saying Governor Gavin Newsom deserves the best plane, even better than Air Force One. I agree. Send the big plane, Prime Minister Carney. I deserve it. Thank you.
For your attention in this matter.
But to your point, I do actually think there is something kind of fascinating about that success, but disturbing that Democrats have to get bitchy and puerile and kind of satirically narcissistic to take on a president. What do you think about that? Or is this where it's won and fought now?
Look, it's not my fight to fight. I'm not here to mount a persuasive argument about anything.
Exactly.
But gosh, it's an interesting tactic, isn't it? And I expect that given how well it's working, we'll see more of this.
Yes.
As we approach the next election. The governor of Maryland has started doing the same thing, you know, making fun of Trump in Trump's language. And I suspect because it's working so well and people are responding to it, it may well be the way in which the midterms and the next presidential election are fought.
And yet it may also cement like an enduring debasement of the way people speak to each other in politics. I think that's something definitely that would concern me in all of this. But in the meantime, I'll be sending you the memes as they come up. White House said, it's just getting weird at this point. It's like, at this point?
Yeah. Oh, we've been here for a while, buddy.
Yeah. All right, Jez, Pics of the week. What have you got?
Okay, so I know you're into recycling and upcycling and just
Sure.
reusing. Like you're a real fan of that. So I've got
Yeah.
this one for you.
Okay.
Scientists at the King's College in London have found a secret ingredient that can help repair and protect damaged teeth.
Uh-oh, what is it?
Your own hair.
Your hair.
Your hair. So they've worked out making toothpaste out of people's hair.
Does it have to be yours?
It doesn't have to be yours.
Oh, it could be anyone's
It can even
hair.
be wool. So it can even be wool from
Oh,
sheep.
sheep. Okay.
But, you know, for argument's sake,
yeah.
hair,
Yeah.
like literally sweeping it up off the floor of the hairdresser,
Yeah.
and giving it to a scientist to mix into toothpaste. And this is how it works. The keratin in hair produces a protective coating that mimics the structure and function of natural enamel when it comes into contact with minerals in the saliva. So, keratin in the hair mixes with saliva, you brush that over your teeth,
Yeah.
and it actually produces a layer of enamel that's much better than the plastics that are currently used to protect teeth and which degrade and which are environmentally, you know,
You mean
not
in
great.
fillings
Yeah,
or
in enamel, tooth enamel.
where are the plastics?
The plastics are in you know, when they put treatments over your teeth because
Right.
you've got
Yeah.
enamel wearing away.
Oh, this sounds promising. I want some like now.
Would you give it a go?
Yeah.
I
Sure.
would too. I was a
Yeah.
bit grossed out at first. I was like, brushing teeth with
Well, I don't
hair,
want
but
some
like,
weird hair from a weird
like
place.
nice hair. Like you wanna brush your teeth with nice hair. But yeah,
Oh, we won't
So-
end up deciding where that hair
that's
comes
my pick of the
from.
week because
Okay, yeah.
they say unlike bones and hair, enamel doesn't regenerate. Once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
And so this is an eco-friendly way. It mimics nature,
Makes our teeth strong.
makes your teeth strong.
Oh.
Do you know, this reminds me of a story. I remember like when I was a teenager watching Beyond 2000. Remember that?
Yeah.
Beyond 2000 had a story about how in Japan they were experimenting with ways of processing human sewage to turn into food.
Okay. It's not an easy.
It's not an easy
Not an
transition
easy
to like
leap.
in your head. Like,
Yeah.
and I've spent like, I don't know, 3+ decades thinking about this. Like, I like recycling, but only
that-
to a point.
I got a limit.
But I feel like this is in the same
Yeah.
genre.
No.
Like, but it's kind of cool. I like that scientists are working on this stuff. It just might take me a while to get there psychologically.
It would be great if it was actually affordable.
Yes. Well, okay.
It would just chew on a bit of hair,
Ingrid,
sort it out. I love that. Thank you.
what's your pick?
All right. Well, I've got a pretty happy pick as well, which is Molly Picklum, world champion surfer from the Central Coast.
What an absolute legend.
Did you see those waves? Like, because she had a tough first round, right? So she had to go to the third round. And then when she's just coming through that barrel nice and clean, comes up over the edge, and she's just pounding her fists together. She's so excited. World champion.
Yeah, and we've been watching her development, in the news.
Yeah.
Just, her progression through the championships and, earlier in her career. And to have reached this point, I mean, people are talking about this as a new era for Australian surfing. And I love that for her. She's, 22?
Yeah.
So she's got a huge career in front of her, potentially.
And Lane Beachley saying she's just worked so hard, she deserves it, and this is a beginning for her. But also, I loved how, unaffected she was when when the cameras were...
Oh, she was going off.
Yeah. It was like, I can't believe it, world champion. Oh, my God. That's just joy.
Congratulations. Look, as always, we love hearing from our listeners, so please get in touch anytime about anything, really. Email us at notstupid@abc.net.au.
And, of course, Jez, you can now see us on iView as well.
Yes.
Where they could see your smashing yellow shirt.
Gosh, it's a bit of an effort getting dressed for this show. I was so accustomed to turning up in a hoodie, the same hoodie every week.
And now it's like, don't clash with the pink.
No.
Our producers are Madeline Jenner and Cinnamon Nippard.
Jules, so nice to catch up again.
It was such a treat.
See ya.
See you next week.